Coming up on this episode of the Roundtable. All I want to ask is, like, why should I listen to anything this person says? Like, this socialist potato, this, like, completely useless lump of flesh sitting at the head of the Davoisie. I'm looking at a picture of him right now. Is socialist potato not an accurate description of that face?
These guys gave us the internet, and it didn't work out the way they wanted to because they don't understand human nature, they don't understand anthropology, they don't understand their own technology, and it gave us Donald Trump and did some other stuff that they didn't like very much. And so what they're going to do is they want to blow it all up and they want to start over again. And they say that this is stakeholder capitalism. You know who's not the stakeholder? You, me. 70 million plus people who voted for Donald Trump, numerous millions of other people around the world who voted for the relevant nationalist or populist candidates. Plus, and here's the kicker here, plus millions and millions and millions of people on the left.
Welcome, everyone, once again to the Roundtable, the Publishers and Editors podcast here at the American Mind at the Claremont Institute. I'm your host, Ryan Williams, president of the Claremont Institute, publisher of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books. Joined, as always, most of the time, we love it, it's the best, by Matthew Peterson, founding editor of the American Mind, vice president of education, Spencer Clavin, associate editor of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books, James Pullis, executive editor of the American Mind, and David Barr, our director of publications. Which leads me to plug David's former position of managing editor. David is excellent. He has made a lateral move. We love him. He's going to do more to promote all of our publications, but we need another managing editor. So please, everyone, go to claremont.org/careers and check out managing editor. Pass it around to folks you think might be interested. We're really looking for someone with 5 years or so experience as a managing editor, or at least an editor of some sort. We need an engine room man to help keep us all on track. As you can imagine, with the volume of content these days, including with Substack and everything else, there's a lot to do. Competitive salaries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, full benefits. So go check it out, claremont.org/careers.
If you've ever heard me on this podcast and thought, I would really love to just smack that uppity kid around, I always want to be in charge of him. This is your job. This is the job for you.
Yeah.
We need someone for the Karens to speak to.
I mean, I think we need to have it's going to be a competitive contest, and then at the end, we should have people on the podcast, you know, just to see like who wins the ultimate prize.
That's truly diabolical, but would be a lot of fun.
Well, I wanted to open today with the Great Reset. So for those of you not familiar with the term, this was a little book published by this dude named Klaus something or other. I'm going to read from his piece in Time. Klaus Schwab, there it is. So in light of COVID and everything else, there's been an acceleration of this recent trend, which is our Davoisie at the World Economic Forum and elsewhere, using the accelerating pace of digital technology, the interconnectedness of the world, the rise of income inequality, as they call it, from neoliberalism, also as they call it, all being an excuse to sort of refashion the international institutions and to usher in, this is our interpretation, I don't think anyone here on this podcast would disagree, an incipient and a growing quasi-global state, or what for you fancy Straussians or political philosophy types out there, what Alexander Kojève called the world homogenous state, and what Leo Strauss denounced as the world homogenous state. Anyway, we don't need to get into all that. I just want to read a couple of things. So Klaus Schwab has published this little book called The Great Reset with a co-author. He's got a new book out called Stakeholder Capitalism, which is sort of it's just a stalking horse for, I would say, managerialist, quasi-socialist capitalism, tinged with social justice themes. And Klaus Schwab is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. And they have this big spread in Time magazine, the current issue, Do they even print Time magazine anymore? I think maybe they do. But anyway, there's this whole spread, and I just want to read from a couple things. So this is Klaus Schwab. He wants to reimagine capitalism for a better economy. This, bear with me, it's a little lengthy. No, I mean, it's just a few paragraphs, but we have to take, it's not
Every word is too many words.
It's not the whole piece, but it's worth taking in all of this, and it's funny along the way.
Ryan, sparrows, please.
I may editorialize at 2 points in particular.
Oh, thank God.
For the past 30 to 50 years, the neoliberalist ideology has increasingly prevailed in large parts of the world. This approach centers on the notion that the market knows best, that the business of business is business. That is a made-up quote. I mean, there's the business of America is business or some Calvin Coolidge variant, but this is ridiculous. Okay, back to Klaus. And that government should refrain from setting clear rules for the functioning of markets. Those dogmatic beliefs have proved wrong, but fortunately we are not destined to follow them. In September, my belief that a more virtuous capitalist system is possible was reaffirmed by an initiative of the Forum's International Business Council, led by Brian Moynihan of Bank of America, of course. They released the stakeholder capitalism metrics, non-financial metrics and disclosures that will be added on a voluntary basis, for now, to companies' annual reporting in the next 2 to 3 years, making it possible to measure their progress over time. Doing so requires answering questions such as, what is the gender pay gap in company X? How many people of diverse backgrounds were hired and promoted? What progress has the company made toward reducing its greenhouse gas emissions? How much did the company pay in taxes globally and per jurisdiction? And what did the company do to hire and train employees? The initial idea that companies should try and optimize for more than just short-term profits came around 2016 from a handful of business leaders who wanted the private sector to play a role in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. All good things at the UN, of course, have an acronym. Individuals such as Moynihan, Franz van Houten of Philips, and Indra Nooyi, then at PepsiCo, enlisted many of their peers in this commitment. In the following years, pressure from social and climate justice movements such as Fridays for Future, inspired by Greta Thunberg, #MeToo, and Black Lives Matter added to the sense of urgency. Business needed to do more than make a well-intentioned but vague pledge. By the summer of 2019, Moynihan and others put forth the idea of creating a tool to measure themselves. By the fall, the work was underway. This is my favorite part. And the big four consulting firms, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, signed on to define the metrics. I'm sure they were happy to sign on to define those metrics.
Oh, yeah.
At no less than $650 an hour. By January, that's probably actually a modest estimate.
Oh, I'm sure you're being very generous.
By January 2020, this is the last paragraph, I promise. Sorry, Spencer.
I approach death.
A first consultation draft of the metrics was ready and enthusiastically received. Then the COVID-19 disaster struck. Would the project survive this global crisis? Oh, God, please, no. And more broadly, would the whole idea of stakeholder capitalism die in the COVID crisis, if only? The concept had been embraced by the U.S. Business Roundtable, a major Washington-based lobbying group of U.S. firms. Shocking. Just months earlier. Now it was feared that nascent commitment to stakeholder capitalism would make way for a more realistic approach in companies. Save what you can, even if it means laying off employees or cutting off suppliers. The horror. Anyway, it's just a few paragraphs after that, but he ends, you will not be surprised, in a hopeful tone, looking forward to the advance of stakeholder capitalism and the continued ascent of what we've called on this podcast woke capitalism, now with increasingly complicated and polished veneers of this is just the world we live in, and how could we not but do business this way?
You know, I mean, I would love to go on a lengthy rant about the absurdities of BLM and wokeness and diversity, but actually I don't even feel it incumbent upon me to do so. All I want to ask is, like, why should I listen to anything this person says? Like this socialist potato, this like completely useless lump of flesh sitting at the head of the Davoisie. I'm looking at a picture of him right now. Is socialist potato not an accurate description of that face? And
his head, really.
Like, complete with the $5,000 bespoke suit.
What did this person ever accomplish that achieved like actionable or measurable value in anybody's life that I should now accept from him a prognosis and a diagnosis for the entire remaking of the world.
The World Economic Forum has a world in it, and therefore this is a big deal.
But look, I mean, the notion that this is somehow a reset of neoliberalism. This is neoliberalism in its final boss form. Like the what a colossal joke. And look, I actually agree that the market will fix everything philosophy, the kind of hyper libertarian Ayn Rand caricature, is a failed model. But the notion that this represents an alternative to it rather than its apotheosis is so laughable. Who does he think is out here peddling the BLM philosophy, the corporatist, woke philosophy, the diversification philosophy? All of these things that he mentions at great length are backed by every major heartless corporation in this country and every other highly developed Western country. The sham of this, and yet, like he gets to make these videos and say these things as if anything that he says matters. Kick him out, salt the earth, never let his kind grow again. That's all I have to say.
You asked Spencer, what's the difference this time? And I will say there's one big difference. And the one big difference is the internet, okay? We have the former sitting president of the United States, Barack Obama, interviewed by His Corpulent Majesty, Jeffrey Goldberg, at the Atlantic magazine, asking him, basically, what's your take on the internet today, Mr. President? And he says he thinks that it's the single biggest threat to democracy, okay? The single biggest threat to democracy is the internet. The internet is the enemy of the people. This is what Barack Obama has to say about what's different today. This is what the Great Reset is really about. I mean, it's about a lot of things, and a lot of it is, as you said, the same old retread that we've seen since the time of frigging H.G. Wells versus Aldous Huxley. Wells sitting there writing Phoenix and the Open Conspiracy about how to create a world government in the wake of World War II, and Huxley comes along. The good Huxley. The bad Huxley was the UN Huxley, Julian Huxley. And the good Huxley says, no, actually, it's not going to work and race Brave New World. Yeah, we haven't really advanced from there in some respects, but guess what? These guys gave us the internet, and it didn't work out the way they wanted to because they don't understand human nature. They don't understand anthropology. They don't understand their own technology. And it gave us Donald Trump and did some other stuff that they didn't like very much. And so what they're going to do is they want to blow it all up and they want to start over again. And they say that this is stakeholder capitalism. You know who's not the stakeholder? You, me. 70 million plus people who voted for Donald Trump, numerous millions of other people around the world who voted for the relevant nationalist or populist candidates. Plus, and here's the kicker here, plus millions and millions and millions of people on the left who remember one day when it was more trendy on the left to believe what Oliver Stone said than it was to believe what the head of the big four consulting companies said. When it was trendier to criticize the Vietnam War for being a failed construct of inbred elites than it was to criticize an app for being structurally racist. Not only is Time running How to Build a Better World, Time is also running Prince Harry and Meghan, who has lost her honorific, discuss the state of the digital world. And, Ryan sent this to me. I said, why do you hurt me? He did not respond. Here's what Prince Harry and Meghan, mouthpieces for these clowns, have to say about this. What our job is, especially throughout these conversations, is to get people to listen to the experts and for them to explain how what's happening in the online world is affecting the world. It is not restricted to certain platforms or certain social media conversations. This is a global crisis of hate, a global crisis of misinformation, and a global health crisis. The internet is going to destroy the world. It's going to kill us all. The internet is the new climate change. And the Great Reset is going to build us back better with a totally transformed internet. Brought to you by the same people who made the internet the first time around and didn't see coming what it was going to do. How can we possibly trust these people to understand who and what a stakeholder is? How can we trust these people to understand what capitalism is? How can we trust them to remake a technology that betrayed their own fantasies the first time around? Of course, the answer is that we can't and we shouldn't, regardless of our political party, regardless of where we fall on the ideological spectrum. A dyed-in-the-wool socialist can believe that these people are nuts and have no business arrogating to themselves control of the world and the internet. Now, further down in the interview with Prince Harry and blank Meghan, the magazine goes on to say that the two noted, quote, they conveyed leaders in the tech world that think they can help make people more aware of these problems. Okay, are you ready for the leaders of the tech world? Including Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian, Center for Humane Technology co-founder Tristan Harris, and my personal favorite, UCLA Center for Critical Internet Inquiry co-director Sophia Noble.
Noble.
Now, who do you suppose Sophia Noble is? Well, she's the author of a couple books, one entitled Algorithms of Oppression.
Oh, yeah, that lady. Right.
Yeah, she's co-editor of 2 edited volumes, including The Intersectional Internet, Race, Class, and Culture, and, not to be confused with Technology, Entertainment, and Design, Emotions, Technology, and Design. Okay, this is a woman who spent, according to her Wikipedia page, let's see, about more than a decade in multicultural marketing, advertising, and public relations before going on to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for her graduate studies, where she earned a PhD and a master's in library and information science. And she then proceeded to zoom right into the tenure track at UCLA.
Can someone pull this ice pick out of my head?
No. You got to leave it in. Otherwise, you'll die immediately. It's like when you get shot in the boot. And so what does she do? She focuses on the politics and human and civil rights concerns of digital media platforms, which includes the integration of these issues in STEM and engineering, education. She explores how racism, especially anti-Blackness, is generated and maintained by the internet. Well, that makes complete sense considering that the internet is the enemy of the people and the new climate change that's going to destroy the entire world. Look, here's what's going on. The internet behaves in a way that elites generating fantasies for everyone to believe, whether they like it or not, can't control. It's a change in medium. I'm getting a little bit blue in the face because I've been talking about these things now for years. Early on, several people, maybe more than several, James, we're not sure what you're talking about. Now I get phone calls, I get texts, I get DMs, I get signals. Oh my God, it's like just what you tweeted yesterday. Yes, because I've been paying attention to what's been going on. And so I'm going to just keep repeating it until something changes. Matt and I have both talked about how words are not enough and how we actually need to do something, because these people want to take our agency away. They want to take our competence away. They want to take our ability to disagree politically away. No more friends on the left and friends on the right having real debates, and then one side wins and the other side loses. That's the way politics works, ruling and being ruled in turn. They want to do away with that. They want ruling forever and ruled forever. And it's just ridiculous. They don't have a majority. They don't have enough stakeholders to pull this off. What they have is a reeling, panicked, decadent, just wealth-encrusted, remote, virtual elite scrambling to maintain power as a new medium that they brought into this world is sweeping them away. And all of us, regardless of our political persuasions, but especially those of us on the right, because many of us have been grumbling about this for long enough without doing something, need to stand up and bring it to an end. They're the enemies of the people, not the internet.
I keep hurting you, James, because you just need to repeat this over and over again with new examples, dialing it up in even more ridiculous ways, because it's a hard thing for people to understand, the collapse of the televisual and the rise of the digital and fantasy makers and all the rest. I mean, it's a hard thing to wrap your head around, especially when you're not in the habit of thinking about, modes of communication and the influence that the medium has on the message, as one of the great scholars of this put it.
And who would be after receiving a college education from these fools?
Yeah, I think the internet's great because I just sorry to ruin this conversation.
No, it's okay. We need some levity.
I just saw someone tweet and call and talk about how Jake Fapper is a charlatan. I don't know. It cracked me up.
No, but this is what James is talking about.
So I do want to make a point. I was actually talking to our friend Peachy Keenan last night, and
a product of the internet.
The way that she put it was, they don't want us talking to each other.
Yeah.
And you know, it really is that way. I mean, that was just an epic grade A Kobe beef rant there by James, and they don't want us talking to each other or communicating, and that's the bottom line. And what's really dangerous about the internet for them is that it enables people to thwart their rule by unifying, organizing, and talking, and it's an acknowledgement in a way of a severe weakness, right? If you can't, you don't think that you can manage people as soon as they're free to speak to each other
right.
about certain topics. It's, you know, the silver lining is they are grasping, and it's melting down, and they're grasping at something that is really hard to control for a very long period of time. On the other end of it, there is a danger that they do discover ways in which to oppress everyone, and that, you know, people roll under and just go dark. I don't, but this has just begun. I mean, it's really just begun.
I mean, look at the way that they're talking about Substack, which isn't even the tip of this.
Have you seen this?
No,
Have you guys
I
all
missed
seen
this today.
Oh, there was a viral tweet about how, you know, if you're white on Substack, it's just much easier to make $2,000 out of the gate, you know, and all of the typical tools are being applied.
Let alone if you're white and gay like Andrew Sullivan.
Oh my gosh.
Then you're just making money hand over fist.
Imagine. Well, that's OnlyFans, I think.
Yeah.
But well, no, but like, you know, and by the way, imagine applying that critique to OnlyFans, for example, which I'm sure eventually they will, because it's, again, not an ideological thing, as James pointed out. It's not actually, you know, we don't like that this forum is one where there are a lot of conservatives, except peripherally. We don't like that this forum is one over which we do not have complete 24/7, 100% control. At all times, we cannot decide what people do and don't say on this platform. Substack, for those of you who don't know, is nothing other than an email subscription service. We have one on the American Mind. It's called the American Mindset. You can go to it. You should, in fact, and sign up for it and get our emails. That's all it is. You just get emails from people who have thoughts. Mike Solana is a great person with a lot of thoughts, and Substack is where you can find his thoughts. That's all it is.
For those not quite wired to Spencer's tempo, he said American Mindset is our new Substack.
The American Mindset.
No, it was great, Spencer. I sorry to interrupt you. You were on a roll.
I was in full flow, Ryan.
You sign up to American Mindset, you will get woke thoughts.
This will happen, right? Exactly. All of the coked out thoughts that I am currently articulating.
No. This is a drug-free podcast.
It's just being played back in real time at 2x.
If you guys could see the size of the drink that I pour myself while James was talking, because his woke teachings were too much for me to handle, it would blow your minds. Look, all Substack is, as I have now said rather quickly, and I will now say slowly for emphasis, all Substack is an email subscription service where you just get people's thoughts. And the way that they are talking about this as James has already articulately indicated and has been articulately indicating for years, all it is that you say your thoughts to people, and the way that they talk about it is as if you were mounting a revolution. You are mounting a revolution. That's something very important for you to know.
Thwart.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to understand. You actually are at the vanguard of a revolution if you have a successful Substack. And the revolution that you are mounting is against the 100% 24/7 control of the people who feel that it is their birthright to write the algorithms. It's not that they feel like they've written good algorithms, or they feel as if they are the people who know best what the structure of the internet should be. It's that they think they are invested by some divine force with the right to construct the environment within which you host your conversations. Now, what Matt is saying is perfectly true. There is a huge momentum. There is an enormous energy on the right at this moment, as we speak, and the past 6 months have increased it greatly, for people to take action on this knowledge. And thank God, because lo, these many years, my entire lifetime, there has been ample analysis of this problem. Plenty of people, or not plenty, but James at least, has been out here saying exactly what this is.
I'm plenty of people.
You're plenty of people.
My life matters.
Listen, James, you're plenty of person.
My takes matter.
Right, but like people have been out here saying,
It's like, please clap. My takes matter.
No.
Okay.
like the understanding has been there, but what hasn't been there until very recently is the energy. And there is now a renegade media. The opposite of the legacy media is the renegade media. All it takes is for you to do this and insist upon doing this and find a way of doing it that is impervious to their reach. And the more of those ways we have, the more chance we have of finding the one that will actually work and we can all get behind.
This is also, look, they're in every way, they are the establishment. They are the people in suits. They are the people who run the World Economic Forum. They are the people in power. And they are trying to keep that power. And that power is very much tied to wealth and cultural currency. Who the rebels are right now is obvious. And I think that there'll be more unity among the rebels as people realize this. So Andrew Sullivan, the Vox guy, just like
Matt
Iglesias. Yeah. Matt Iglesias.
Glenn Greenwald.
Glenn Greenwald. These people are all leaving, right? These organizations. These are all the rebels. We are the rebels. And this is now, you're mainstreaming the rebel. That's what they're doing. When you tamp down like that, I mean, anyone in any position of authority will know of this. I remember once in my undergrad years, this is the example I always give.
Oh, go on,
I
man.
don't know if I should tell this story.
Oh, you should, of course.
Please.
A bunch of guys decided in an act of protest against the administration that they were going to have naked time and sing songs naked because someone got in trouble for accosting someone else with very little clothing on. And I remember saying, if you go after naked time and say like you guys are going to get in trouble for doing this with a bunch of young guys, it's strict college, right? I mean,
Right.
naked time is encouraged everywhere else.
Of course.
But trans naked time
Would be fine.
yeah. But so if
Wait,
you
what
go,
the hell are we talking about?
Yeah, this is really starting to.
we're gonna have to.
What's going on?
We're gonna have to edit this.
You gotta land this
No,
plane.
I
Peterson.
wanna.
No. So the point is, if you
I
go
feel bad for having encouraged
after
it.
and try to punish them, right, or say you can't do this, you're just going to make it worse, right? You're in fact going to then encourage or mainstream or norm the protest,
Right?
And that's exactly what we have here in large scale. I mean, there's a certain point at which when you push too hard, you then all of a sudden radicalize. We use that word. You radicalize the other side. But what's important about that, if it means anything, is you make it a normal habit and a way of life for them to oppose you.
Right.
And that is precisely what the left has done. So there's the silver lining in all of this, and this this rage, this frenzy, the most powerful people in the world talking about a great reset, the most powerful people in the world talking about how the internet is the central danger to quote unquote democracy or their own power. The silver lining is they are making it so that everyone has to draw a line in the sand, and they will unify all of those who stand against them. And they really are the boring establishment who says nothing, and they're the caricature really of what what the hippie types in the 60s and 70s were fighting against. I mean, that is those folks. James mentioned the Vietnam War. I was cracking up on the way here because NPR, besides not mentioning Trump, who just doesn't exist anymore, that's their plan, I think, at this point, had some book author on about the Chicago 7 and the protests about the Vietnam War back in the day, because Aaron Sorkin wrote a movie that's out now online about this, glorifying these radicals, and it really was incredible because the protests that occurred in the 60s were against who? The Democratic establishment,
Right?
Because they were the ones who started the war, right?
Right.
And they're just mentioning this matter-of-factly, and it's hilarious, right? I mean, now you have a uniparty establishment that doesn't want us to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years because it's just too soon. So I mean, I would say that the silver lining is here that they are mainstreaming and widening the opposition.
So,
And look, I have to unburden myself with one more thing here, and I'm sure you'll all find it in your heart to indulge me. I'm not in this to scapegoat straw men. You know, like I enjoy having friends who are not clones of, you know, my hobby horses. If you can believe it, I think I'm actually still technically friends of Meghan Markle. Okay, and like it's good for citizens.
That's
to
the
have
Duchess
opinions.
of Sussex, please,
because
James.
because citizens will have opinions in a free society, in a society that's not just free but is somewhat to some degree educated, where people are liberal in the medieval sense of being people who do not simply toil away in some laborious animalistic fashion. Okay, you have to have citizens with opinions. This is in human nature, and if you have citizens with opinions, they will differ on matters large and matters small. And so, you know, I take seriously when some of these panicky people in the ruling class, in the discourse ruling class, you know, the blue checks and the blue hairs, we have a misinformation problem on the internet. And well, guess what? It's in the real world too. Yes, people are misinformed about a number of things. They might find it terrifying and shocking because it threatens their power more than it threatens mine, I guess. But reality check. How did so many people get so misinformed? How are there so many people who are so disenchanted and so radically refusenik when it comes to anything presented to them on a screen that they are willing to believe that the moon landing didn't happen, or the Earth is flat, or, you know, many such things, way beyond what Oliver Stone would have said back when he was held up by the left as a champion of free thought and of a political probity. Okay. And the answer is, well, you people miseducated them. You know, why are we all laughing about tranny naked time? It's because that's what they've substituted for an education. You got basically 3 disciplines in university campuses today. 1, you got the hard sciences. 2, you got the natural sciences, and 3, you have the social sciences. Everyone's pouring into the social sciences. No one is being taught the humanities. They don't know how to care anymore. Natural science is probably mostly at this point psychology, which is grouped in the natural sciences, which is an offense against education all on its own. And then there's the hard sciences. People come in, they take some classes, lots of them wash out, and they trickle down into the social sciences. And what are the social sciences, you ask? Critical theory. And what's critical theory? Well, we all know what that is now. And what that is you don't actually get an education. You get indoctrinated into a sequence of fantasies that, as the digital medium continues to disenchant away all the crappy bullshit jobs in knowledge work and in fantasy work that are waiting for you, instead of doing someone else's knowledge, producing fantasies for a living, what you do is you get ritualized into a political theology, which is what internationalized global woke state wokeness is. It's become a political theology. And it's designed to give people something to do that isn't knowledge work and isn't even fantasy work, because those things are recognizably being hollowed out by the fact that our culture and our civilization is being evacuated, be sucked out of people's skulls and replaced with nothing. And so, yeah, there's misinformation. Where is it coming from? Decades of miseducation from which there's no turning back, and a complete disenchantment of biblical religion while we're at it. Those things have been totally abandoned by our elites. Now they're coming around, oh my God, maybe we need a religion to make sure that people don't just run screaming into the street until they disappear over the horizon. And their religion, their political theology, is the woke one. That's all they have to bring to the table.
Yeah, and we should just make a quick plug, given James's description of what's going on there. For the Claremont Institute Center for the American Way of Life, one of our new Washington Fellows, Josh Mitchell, who's a mentor of James, is from Georgetown and his dissertation advisor. But Josh has a new book out called American Awakening, which is about the religious quality of modern identity politics. And we were all not everyone, Barr and Spencer weren't there, but we were at an alumni retreat with many of our former fellows, and Josh was on one of the panels, and he predicted he said this identity politics, right now it's resting on the white heterosexual male, but it's going to move on to new targets. It must find new scapegoats. And he predicted that the next target would be the white woman. And that same very day I saw, I think 3 or 4 hours later, it may have been coterminous when it actually came out, but Joy Reid had an assembled panel of people. Yeah. And she was asking them, about various the topic was, why do people of color vote for Trump? Or why in general do people vote for Trump? And one of the panelists said that, the big problem that we have to deal with in identity politics right now and in politics generally is the fact that white women, more than any others, marginalize and oppress through their success and their opining and everything else, black men. And then Josh also predicted, but before he'd seen any of that, he said the next target would be the black heterosexual male. So I suspect Josh has his finger on the pulse of a lot of this stuff. Go out, buy his book, American Awakening. We're going to keep addressing these issues.
Are white gays just late to the party, or have we already been canceled? I can't remember.
I thought you guys were canceled.
Yeah, I think we're canceled.
I think you're almost canceled.
We're pretty canceled.
You're problematic, Spencer.
There's one like last call to action that I want to issue to that will probably be relevant to listeners of our podcast. And then I hope we'll talk about COVID restrictions.
Yes,
we're all
please.
so mad. However, if you wish to join the resistance to this blob, if you are actually excited by this show and a number of other rebel media endeavors, you can. You can be part of it. You can be part of this, the only place where there is life.
Disclaimer, we're not actually part of Rebel Media TM.
We're not advertising Ryan. You keep getting in the way of
That's
my highfalutin rhetorical.
It's a Canadian media organization.
Right. We are not part of Rebel Media. We're part of we are, however, part of the Renegade Media. And I'm not advertising to you a post on this podcast or a slot in the American Mind or anything of that kind. All I'm saying is you can be part of the only and, in fact, most exciting movement in our lifetimes. All you have to do is give up your fear. And I know that's easier for me to say than for some other people. I know that I speak from a position of being encouraged by my employers rather than discouraged. No, I mean, I do speak from a position of privilege in this regard, and it's been made apparent to me, and I know that that's true. I know that people have things to risk. I know that there are stakes. I know that as the gospel, in fact, tells us they will kill you for telling the truth. I understand that you will lose things and that those things will cost you and that they will hurt. I do not take that lightly. Nevertheless, it is the only thing worthwhile, and all you have to do is not care. Don't care if they call you racist. Don't care if they denounce you from all of their platforms. Don't care. And suddenly you will discover that a vast army of friends, actual friends who care about the same things you care about, are involved in the fight of America's life. And you can be part of that. All you have to do is give up your fear. As the prophet says, them that are with you are greater than them that are against you, and you just have to join in.
There's a great freedom in that.
Right.
There's great freedom in
true liberation.
Not caring about the structure that's already melting down.
Yep.
And that's what I think people need to realize. It's like, look, it's not even in your own self-interest. I mean, this whole thing is melting down. The reason Barack Obama is saying these things is because they're all panicked.
Yeah.
They sense that what they had is gone and it's disappearing, and they're acting in desperation. So we're the ones who have hope in the true sense, and we're free intellectually. But you go back to what James was saying about education. I think it's really important. I mean, the problem is that the educational formation of the people we're talking about is so shallow and so thin. These are all, I mean, in a way, we are all on this boat. I mean, we're all midgets crawling around the ruins of a formerly great civilization. And we don't even know what to do. We don't even know how to read the signs of what used to be there. So the mental categories for concepts like justice or the common good, right? I mean, we're like spouting off cartoons about these concepts that when in fact these are the things, the understanding of which should order all the political and cultural structure that we have around us. And so this kind of thin technocratic education very smart people receive leads to guys like the German guy that Ryan's reading at the beginning of this podcast. And look, anyone with any kind of basic traditional understanding of politics, human nature, whatever, would know when it comes to speech, for instance, you can have more freedom the more that people agree on the fundamentals. At a certain point, right, if there's always, even in free speech societies like America, there's always blasphemy laws, et cetera. Like there's certain things that you just can't have people able to say everything freely because they conflict in their ideas and it will cause controversy, et cetera, et cetera. So the more that you agree on the basic principles and purposes of government and human nature, et cetera, actually the more freedom you can have, right, given that agreement. And so within that agreed upon framework, you can have a lot of disagreement. And I think really what's happening in the larger scale right now is that we don't have a fundamental or overarching agreement about what political life is, about why human beings should be engaged in political life together, even about what human beings are. And if you don't have that kind of agreement, then free speech becomes very difficult to maintain because you have these fundamentally opposed ways of life. And that is exactly what you see now. The deeper problem is not only we just want to be in charge and we don't want anyone who disagrees with us to be able to say what they want to say, and we want to maintain our power. There's also an even more fundamental we believe in these fundamental things, and these people are so other, they need to be crushed.
Yeah, to quote the great Walter Sobchak from The Big Lebowski, this is not NAM. There are rules. The problem is when you dispute about what the ground rules should be, civility and even speech become offensive to each side and threatening, and that's where we are. And we don't think there's no way through, but the way through is certainly not easy. Well, let's talk a bit about rule by fiat. Why not? So it's been a while on this podcast since we've talked about COVID.
I'm drunk enough now to talk about COVID.
We got the Pfizer news.
I'm working to get there.
Yeah. Barr reminds us we do have some Pfizer news that what Trump predicted all along and what he was dragged for, as the kids say, at his first debate with Biden by Chris Wallace. Judas. Well, it's unfair, actually. We all knew Wallace was kind of a left of center Dem who was making his way to make a living on Fox. So he's not really Judas. He just finally came out of the closet. But
worse.
Yeah, I mean, he said experts said it. Well, he was quoting experts that it would be a miracle if there were a vaccine this year, and it looks like Pfizer is on its way to a pretty effective one. We will see. We'll reserve judgment till we have all the facts. But yeah, COVID. I will say, I think it's even producer Jake and Alyssa, really the whole Claremont Institute, anyone on this podcast, none of us have had COVID, which is nice.
To our knowledge.
Yeah, that's right.
And all of us, we kiss a lot of people.
It's true.
we make out at the Claremont Institute.
Despite our
Claremont
dissolute
Institute.
lifestyles, still have had no COVID. The fittest among us is Spencer, and so he may have had it completely asymptomatically.
I'm
but
sure that I've had
the
it
rest of us,
times, innumerable times.
Within spitting distance or beyond 40, we would have known if we'd had it, and we haven't. But anyway, enough joking about it. So, well, we're here in California, many of us. So Barr is not, but the rest of us are. So Gavin Newsom was recently caught at the French Laundry at a birthday party dinner for one of his friends, including, amazingly, which was revealed today, I think, if not late last night, that some of his attendees at the French Laundry, where dinner goes for $350 to start, and it's usually, the last I looked, it's like between 12 and 16 courses, just depending. And that is, all these people, they love life, as we would too. They get the wine pairing, so it's more like $600 before tax, gratuity, and everything else. They were all dining, as far as I could tell, inside-ish at the French Laundry, while Newsom instructs through his health department and through his various county health directors, or his in scare quotes, but they're all marching to the same tune, that all of us cannot dine inside. We can dine outside, but it looks like, given the new case counts, that we'll only be able to do that at 50% capacity, hurting all these restaurants. Retail has now been dropped, will be dropped as of Friday to 25% inside, hurting all those businesses. And I hear from my sources that if the case count goes above 4,000 or 4,500 daily, or the hospitalization rate goes past 2,000 increase daily, that Newsom is contemplating a statewide curfew, personal curfew, and a full 3-week lockdown, as we've had before. Right now, as of Friday, there's going to be basically a business curfew, I think, of 10 or 11 p.m. Meanwhile, Whitmer is imposing new stuff in Michigan despite court cases saying she couldn't, given the old statute. She's breezing past that. And Cuomo is, it's de Blasio, shutting schools down again in New York City. So here we are, including, this is the last little detail. So the director of the CDC, Redfield, I think it was I think that's his name, maybe 2 months ago in testimony, might have been 3 months, 2 months or so, he said, this mask, and he was holding it up. Holding it up and touching his face and, breaking rules. He said this is really the most important protection mechanism. And he said, including for yourself, maybe even more than a vaccine. And there's a new Danish study out of 3,500 people, which has been basically, from what we read, suppressed for the last 2 months. They could not get it published. That really showed that masks do not provide you a statistically significant protection from the virus, which has been the CDC's line of late, and then provide very, very minimal protection for others, especially in all but very confined spaces. Anyway, the COVID madness continues. I used to think, I wonder what you guys all think of this, but just talk freely, of course. I used to think, we've joked about it, that if Biden were elected, and I'm not suggesting that's a done deal yet, there's still fight left, things will play out. But if Biden were elected, the whole COVID madness would end. But I don't think that's true anymore. Exactly. I think Biden is so committed, and the ruling class is so committed that they're just going to roll through, even if he and Wamala take over as Veep and president.
I have to say, I was very much. This was the taxi cab Uber driver wisdom,
right?
This summer,
which we all love.
It was like secret handshake, the dance you kind of do, like, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm involved in politics, and what they would all say is, well, we know what's going to happen. As soon as the election happens, we know this will go away. But that was never true because the power that this gives these people is really unbelievable. And I'm going to touch my face right now while I drink this booze,
and breathe on the rest of us.
Yes, it is. It's as bad or worse as the worst conspiracy theorist has said, in my view. Like, I really think there's a kind of almost religious impulse in people when it comes to the virus and the virus restrictions. To grab onto it. It's not just political. Obviously, a lot of it is, if you're on the left, you want to accost Republicans because they're dangerous super spreaders or whatever. But it really goes to the same thing with the woke stuff, right? It's the same kind of impulse and desire to say, oh no, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll say that and shut up. But I do want to say about Newsom, I don't even understand why anyone's upset. Of course he's at the French Laundry privately opening for him. You live in an effing oligarchy. Do you understand that yet? Right? People are upset about Newsom. You think, oh, he's not following the rules he sets for everyone else. Of course Are you serious? Like, have you been looking around at America in the last 5 to 10 years? Of course not. And of course he's going to have this. The egregious part out of it is the California Medical Association folks are there with him. But of course he's going to be at this thing because he's not worried about the virus at all. He's a healthy individual. He and everyone else at that meeting are not worried about dying or even being that sick. Their chances are very low. And they're going to go have this private meeting as they would have before because that's the way the world works. And I don't really know at what point anyone will be upset. What is clear to me is that some people have been shocked and upset by this Newsom example, and it suggests that a lot of people still, especially probably like upper middle class, like Californians, who are so naive, they've been so taken in by this, and they're like, oh, well, wait a minute, he shouldn't be doing that.
I want to have dinner French.
Exactly.
It's a mix of the two, right? It's he shouldn't be doing that.
Exactly.
But also, why can't I have dinner
and also,
French
F you, buddy. I haven't been able to go out for a while. So I hope that catches, but I'm very cynical about this.
It's the perfect illustration in miniature of the larger trends that James was identifying about the internet. These folks, the Obamas and the Davoisie and any number of other folks that we've mentioned so far, they know that their gig is up. They know that it's only a matter of days, or if worst case scenario, generations, before this thoroughly viral, thoroughly cratered, just utterly corrupt oligarchy collapses from the sheer emptiness of its insides. They know that's happening. They see the signs. We all see the signs. Everybody knows. And so all they are doing now, their only play, is for as many days of power as they can have. They just want to extend their wizened, dead regime for as many days as they possibly can. The exact same thing happened the minute that the Trump vaccine was announced. I was a little bit on the post-election this will all go away trend until Pfizer said we've got a vaccine. Then you know that they realize their days are numbered, because they have had for months now a bottomless well of fear to draw upon. It was like the keys to the candy shop for dictators and tyrants. It was just here's just an endless supply of people being scared, and they could take from that whenever they wanted to make you do whatever they wanted you to do. And now it's going away. There will be a time when that logic simply won't hold, and so they are going to squeeze every last ounce of compliance out of you they can, and these small, vile, miserable tyrants are going to stand at the front. Look, at this point, you should resist them with everything you have. There was a time when I said on this podcast, look, it's a disease. We don't know how bad it is. Yeah. We should like allow for that. We should take care. No more. Let it be done. It's over. There was a time when there were unknowns. There are no more unknowns about this virus. It has a 99% survival rating for the vast majority of healthy people. Do not comply. It's over. Anybody who's listening to my voice, do not let these people rule you. They do not deserve
They're
to.
so unimpressive. Like, you just think about
grief.
Gavin Newsom. I mean, you think about these people and their talents, their capabilities.
Zero.
These are thoroughly unimpressive people.
Right.
They're not even someone you'd want to hire if you owned, like, you know, the local drive-through gas station
He'd be a
business
good
down
used
the
car
street.
salesman.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's right. He'd be a good salesman. I can grant you that. Yeah. You know, good used car salesman, sure. Maybe a real estate agent in some places.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, this is why
go to the gym.
no one's going to own anything, is because no one is capable of doing anything. If this is the stock from which we are choosing our leaders. I mean, I think it strikes me that all of us have been right about what is going to happen to the virus going forward at all times, by which I mean that for some people it's going to go away and for other people it's not. And if you are favored by the regime, there's not going to be a pandemic. And if you are disfavored by the regime, there is going to be a pandemic. There are get out of jail cards and there are get out of pandemic cards that are, being virtually passed around to people. If you are on the right side of the wall, you get to move about with impunity. And if you are not, then you get to be punished. If you create a woke mob in the street, you get to do that freely. If you would rather, worship inside of a church rather than worship the woke mob in the street, you may not do that. It's just a very easy pattern, and it can be applied freely across the country. And the only way that it's going to stop is if political officials lower in the hierarchy than federal officials begin to say no. They begin to say, we're going to do something else. They begin to say, hey, we trusted you. We know this is difficult. We all have, our own version of this problem. Nobody wants anyone to die. On the other hand, we can't shut down our life. We can't shut down our state. We can't shut down our city. And more importantly, you can't create a permanent emergency, declaration of emergency, that you selectively apply to those who you do not favor. It's just not going to work. And people aren't going to do it. It's not me or anyone else saying, oh, I'm an expert and I'm here to tell you that because you share my identity, you should do X or Y. That's not what's going to cause people to flood into the streets or challenge the federal government or begin acting in forms of civil disobedience on a massive scale. It's going to be ordinary people sizing up the situation, looking at the road that's being laid out for them, and determining around the kitchen table that it ain't going to be.
Lori, sorry. Go
Why do people keep voting for? I mean, I have a serious question.
Yeah.
If Newsom is so bad, this is like this kind of. I know this sounds stupid, but why do people keep
It's a one
voting for him? I mean, now you have. I can understand the wool being pulled over one's eyes by like slick politicos on behalf of a given politician. But now the rubber is met the road. Like, like your welfare has been impacted negatively. Your neighbors have lost their mom and pop stores. Like, how does this guy still, or what are his approval ratings? I shouldn't assume that people are.
Yeah, I haven't
jealous.
looked. They haven't had a chance to vote for Newsom yet again, but I haven't looked.
But I guess that Republicans or conservatives, didn't they make some inroads in the legislature, like surprisingly?
This election, yeah, but I mean the problem
Yeah.
is in the past. Let's just get briefly clear on how Newsom came into his position. I mean, he was really his greatest challenge in life, besides sleeping around and pissing off his wife and losing her. But I don't even think that was his greatest challenge. His greatest, he doesn't care. His greatest challenge was having to wait for Jerry Brown to step down because he was really pissed. He went another round and he wanted to become governor after Willie Brown gave him the, anointed him king of San Francisco.
Well, Willie Brown is so good to so many people, Matt.
Right. I mean, so Kamala, right, is senator. He tells Willie Brown tells Villaraigosa not to run to make sure his girl gets the Senate, and then he crowns Gavin because Gavin was the young, up and coming, connected money guy for his campaigns to be king of San Francisco, and on and on and on. I mean, I think you have to understand that people don't think there's another option. This is a one-party state. And the Republicans put up a carpetbagger from Illinois, right? I mean, they don't. It's like a cartoon character thing. Like there's no serious Republican candidate for governor. The Republican Party in California for the last 20 years is an experiment that has not been tried. I do have to say that. I mean, they don't exist. It's not an extant thing. So it's not as if
They have little pockets of success, like Orange County and San Diego, kinda. Yeah.
And so I'm curious. Actually, we haven't even talked about this since the election, Ryan. But I do think there are some signs Barr is pointing to that are interesting, where you do see in the House these races in Orange County going are, even if the Republican Party in California is a non-entity or even worse than a non-entity, kind of negative.
Yeah, it's been incapable for years of building at the local level and wielding power effectively with that end. I mean, it's been fairly effective given its constrained possibilities at the congressional level, although they kind of got wiped out in the midterms for quasi-fraudulent reasons with ballot harvesting and everything else. And they've regained some ground. I always forget the name of all these. There's the DCCC and then I think it's the RNCC. But anyway, they did well in California this time around, and it looks like, and they were helped by, frankly, a Trump wave, which many of us are scratching our heads over because it seemed to be a Trump wave nationally, down ticket, and yet Biden sort of is outperforming Obama in the places exactly where he needed to do it by phenomenal levels. It's but that's a topic for maybe next week. Yeah, but the local level Republicans, as far as we can tell, have either been kind of quixotically feckless, or sort of Me Too. Not hashtag Me Too, but sort of get along. I'm a kindler, gentler, sort of business friendly, center left person in this state, and that's not a real alternative. So the stupidity. So the old joke, the old Stan Evans joke, is that the Republicans are the stupid party. That has been the case in spades in California, especially at the local level for a long time. A state which is huge and has lots of opportunities at all sorts of what we think are sort of misguided and frankly should be unconstitutional delegations of authority all across the state, special districts and everything else, but present ample opportunities for enterprising politicians, real politicians in the old sense, to advance themselves and build their party. And yet we continue to fail in this state.
Where to begin? The Gavin Newsoms of the world
Wait, Spencer, you're a Latin supremacist now, aren't you?
I am a Latino supremacist. No, I mean, I genuinely like this whole. People need to think in much more radical terms than they're currently thinking. And let me make it clear, since everything that one says and writes in any context can be taken out of context. I am not advocating armed insurrection. I deplore such measures. But any other resistance mechanism that is at your disposal, you should be using at this point. Like, I am currently leveraging every platform that I have to say, if they pull a curfew on you, go out en masse. We've already discussed the degree to which personal relationships and friendships and community are our greatest asset. Gather together the people who will resist. I am not giving up my gym. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not going to stop going to my gym, and I'm not going to let them close. If they're outside, they're all my friends. Everybody who is there is my friend. They do not want to close. They should not close. I will not allow them to close. We will stand outside, and we're all we're all a lot stronger than these stupid soy boys that are trying to close these businesses. Like, they truly don't have, because they don't have the merit that would suggest that would legitimize their power. They
Also low T.
They're also very low T. Like, they don't have the merit that would legitimize their power, and so you have every right to stand in opposition to them in any way that is available to you outside of violently resisting the American regime. We're not at that point yet. Look, I'm not saying that point could never exist, but we're not there yet. However, nevertheless, everything else that you have in you, this is the time to leverage it against these tyrants.
And you reminded me of the thread I lost, Spencer. Thank you. You see, I was just looking at giant truck water cannons spraying across German massive crowds protesting second lockdown, COVID.
Oh, wow.
So it's also the case
Really? I
that
had no idea, but this is going on right now.
Oh yeah, in Western Europe they're protesting
wow.
vehemently.
And be ready.
And our presidential election has kind of sucked all that energy out of the room.
Right.
But I think it's going to come back with a vengeance. Especially, I mean, I don't know. Look, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole just yet, but it looks increasingly to be the case that the major airlines and others. I was just reading a tweet from one of our fellow travelers on Twitter, certainly not a conservative, but a perspicacious predictor of a lot of this stuff, Adam Townsend, who said, look, it's not going to be the government that enforces all this. It's going to be Amazon. It's going to be the airlines.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be able to get a dentist appointment without proving that you took the vaccine.
Yep.
So that's we said this 6 months ago, right? Which is prepare yourselves for mandatory nationwide vaccines for a virus that is a respiratory virus that is not that deadly for most of the population. And I think there's a big portion of the population that's really going to resist taking this thing, especially as we approach what might be, modified herd immunity at 30%. So, anyway, we don't need to opine on any of this in an epidemiological fashion, but it's just going to continue to be a shit show.
You know who this pleases to no end?
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting.
No.
It's just, we haven't brought this up in a little while, and people are letting these guys off the hook. Are the Chinese?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, who enjoys this? They talk for all the charges that were leveled at the current president for being in Russia's lap. I mean, like, let's. I don't want to.
Countries
No,
in
it is-
China's
it
It's a
is-
family
wait,
show.
wait,
Just
wait,
how
got the
deeply
whole
embedded
world
Biden is with
in
China.
its hands.
Yeah, it is China. It is Chinese
yes.
army. It is Chinese army orthodoxy that a short, sharp strike against the United States would be all it took to conquer us. Why? Because domestic pressures against mass deaths would make it impossible for us to mount a sustained counteroffensive. In that regard, as I'm not the first to point out, our COVID response is a perfect signaling mechanism. We have made clear that they are exactly right.
I don't know about that. I don't think it was a short, sharp strike. A real short, sharp strike from China, I think, would be met with massive resistance. But a sort of ambiguous. No, this is sort of. It's actually an analog to what our many friends were really worried about in the sort of nuclear EMP era, which was, say, Iran or China sponsored by, or Iran sponsored by China, were to launch a nuclear weapon into the upper atmosphere over Kansas and detonate it and cause an EMP strike, and then they sank the boat. And it was sort of ambiguous who caused it or what, how, what was the chain of custody of that thing, who facilitated it, and you had mass casualties, which we've had, not to the tune of an EMP over Kansas, but with ambiguous authors of it. It would be kind of crippling, and I think this has been a nice dry run for that for China. And our response has not been encouraging. Yeah, go.
I do think that Spencer's picking up on something which I alluded to earlier, but which he's picking up on for reasons other than that I had alluded to it earlier. Namely, the rise of a religious sensibility on the left is leading to phenomena that we are not used to seeing in America. And it's not a traditional biblical religious sensibility, but there are still patterns of thought that, as Josh Mitchell suggested in his book, which is a must read for 2020, what's left of it. The feeling is deepening that we deserve punishment, that if something bad happens to us, we deserve it, that we should be in some sense humiliated, that is a just punishment for our society's crimes. And, I think if pressed, some of these people would think, well, yeah, if China created the virus and sent it to us to screw us up, in some deep sense, we deserved it, right? We're the bad guys after all. Our society is the structurally racist one. We're the ones who have perpetrated 400 years of injustice over millions and hundreds of millions of people and living and dead. And I think there's this masochistic sensibility. And I think there's a psychological turn toward, not just self-flagellation and very publicly so, but all the reprisals and the inquisitions and the millenarian despair and almost a perverse lust for punishment that we saw, in some of the worst periods of time in the Middle Ages.
Yep.
That plays very much into the hands of any ambitious Chinese general or any ambitious Russian operative or really anyone in the world who's trying to score some quick points as the table's been flipped in 2020 by all these different events. And I'm waiting for people to rise to public office who are really going to get on the television. Echoes of Jimmy Carter here. If it's cold, put on a shower. America has, but to get on and take it to the next level and say, you really have to admit that we deserve it.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, but I do want to plug once again, as I did at the beginning, American Awakening from Joshua Mitchell. Go to Amazon. You can order it now. And then also this, James brought up, medieval times and millenarianism. Go to search Angelo Codavilla at ClaremontReviewBooks.com. And I think two issues ago, he talked about this millenarian phenomenon and this interesting book from about mid-century on the topic. We need to read a lot and understand the religious aspects to the current phenomenon. And those are two great guides to that. Thank you all for listening to the Roundtable. If you want to learn more, visit our websites at AmericanMind.org, Claremont.org, and ClaremontReviewBooks.com. Don't forget to rate very well, 5 stars, please.
Don't rate it if you don't want to rate it well. Keep your bad opinions to yourself.
That's right.
If you like us, let everyone know. If you don't, be quiet.
Be quiet.
Shut up. Yeah.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. Review, share, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to our production and engineering crew, Jake Gannon and Annalisa Lee. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any good candidates for our managing editor position at the American Mind, competitive salary, good benefits, we need someone with some editing experience and a good sense of organization and diligence. Go to Claremont.org/careers. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next week.
That's like me. I'm fat on the inside. On the outside, I'm thin, but inside.
I just think of Cartman when you say that.
Hey, man.
Social distancing, man. He's got his stick.
Oh, man. That special has stayed with me more than anything.
And plus, he captures the COVID diet so well. He's just having cheesy proofs with milk for cereal.
It is great.
It's good.
Can I make that an outtake?
Sure.